Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. We're excited to have you with us. My name is Jennifer Metz, and I am the Marketing Manager for Early Childhood Products at Brookes Publishing. This webinar is on the Inclusive Classroom Profile and how the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center is using the ICP to improve inclusive practices in their program. We're happy to have Drs. Alicia Westbrook and Leslie Laverne of the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center here with us. Before we start, I want to go over some housekeeping tasks. You'll be muted for the webinar, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box. We'll take these questions after the presentation during the Q&A session. For best audio and screen quality, you may want to exit any unneeded programs. Also, we are recording this webinar, and you will receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email tomorrow. Now, I would like to start the presentation by reviewing the Inclusive Classroom Profile. And here are our presenters. We have Dr. Alicia Westbrook, who is the Director of the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center, and we also have Dr. Leslie Laverne, the Coordinator of the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center. So thank you both for being here with us. So our agenda, first we're going to look at what is the Inclusive Classroom Profile. We're going to get a background of the MECIC. We're going to learn how does the MECIC use the ICP, a lot of acronyms there, the next steps for the MECIC, and then we will do our question and answer session. And now to start on the Inclusive Classroom Profile. What type of tool is the ICP? The Inclusive Classroom Profile is a structured classroom observation tool. It is based on a 1 to 7 point Likert rating scale. The ICP includes 12 inclusive practices. These are the 12 key practices with the strongest research base for supporting the education and development of young children in inclusive classrooms. As you can see here, we have the 12 items of the ICP. We have the adaptations of space and materials, adult involvement in peer interactions, adult guidance of children's free choice activities and play, conflict resolution, membership, relationships between adults and children, support for communication, adaptation of group activities, transitions between activities, feedback, family professional partnerships, and monitoring children's learning. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers. From the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center, we have Dr. Alicia Westbrook. She is the Director of the Mississippi Early Childhood Inclusion Center. She works on several early childhood grants at the Institute for Disability Studies at the University of Southern Mississippi, providing training to early childhood educators, conducting diagnostic evaluation with the PEDS team, writing grants, and supporting efforts to provide awareness for the early identification for children with autism. And then we also have Dr. Leslie Laverne. She's the coordinator of the Pediatric Evaluation and Diagnostic Services team and the Inclusive Classroom Profile Assessor. She is Mississippi's ambassador to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Learn the Signs, Act Early program. Dr. Laverne provides training to families, early childhood educators, and other professionals in regards to developmental monitoring and the importance of early identification of developmental delays. So now I'm going to turn it over. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. This is Alicia Westbrook. I'm excited to be with everyone today and to introduce you to our program and how we're utilizing the ICP here in Mississippi. So the overarching goal of our center is to provide children with disabilities and their families and their educators with training and technical assistance so that they can be a part of a high quality early inclusion classroom. We would not be able to do this without the help of our state funders. To meet the needs of children with disabilities and early childhood programs, the Mississippi Department of Human Services contracts with us to provide MECIC. We provide training and technical assistance to early childhood educators, families, and we also support families through our family navigation and our screening and diagnostic evaluation. So we recognize the importance of both supporting teachers and families to really make inclusion work for our little ones. One of the specialty programs that MECIC offers is our preschool credential program. This is a 40-hour certificate program that utilizes the ICP to measure quality inclusive practices of the participants, as well as to assess the effectiveness of our professional development program. Our credential, the foundation for our credential is Universal Design for Learning, which we all know really supports equal access for all children in classroom learning opportunities and activities. And it's also aligned with the DEC recommended practices. We've got several different components that make up the credential program. Of course, we utilize the ICP. Participants receive both pre and post assessments. We do individualized technical assistance. We, based on the ICP, each participant gets their own individualized plan of action. We have didactic trainings, self-directed learning activities, and on-site mentoring for the participants. Participants in the credential really are immersed in a comprehensive professional development program. Our didactic trainings cover 6 major topics, and it's 18 clock hours of training that they participate in. Topics, for example, include developmental monitoring, parent engagement, early childhood inclusion, program planning, advancing pre-academic development and developmental milestones, and also supporting positive behavior. Again, like I said, the ICP is administered before any sort of training or technical assistance has been provided. And we'll develop a plan of action based on concerns that were identified during this initial assessment. And our on-site mentoring is individualized to meet where there were areas of concern. Again, our participants are, oh, could you go back one more? I'm sorry. Our participants are really immersed in this whole 40-hour program. It's almost like going back to school. They have specialized learning assignments that help to help them take what was taught in the didactic training and let them work on it in their classroom. And then we have a roundtable discussion. That's one of the favorite parts, although participants often dread it. It ends up being one of the favorite parts because we will use video and do some reflecting on the different practices that they learned in the credential. So it's a really nice time for teachers from different environments and different settings to come together and see different practices. As teachers, we're often kind of stuck in our own little classroom. So it's an opportunity for them to see other teachers practicing. And then, of course, the on-site mentoring. So my colleague, Dr. Laverne, is going to talk to you about the plan of action. She really helped create this plan of action so that we were able to help teachers identify those strengths in their classroom and then also what those concerns were. Leslie?
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Laverne. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the plan of action that we developed and then go over some of the data, some of our findings. This is actually the second round of plan of action, the second version of it. The first one was more in-depth, and we found that that was a little intense for the participants. So we pared it down to what it is now. What you're seeing on the screen is a brief description. So it's just typically they have anywhere from 6 to 10 suggestions on there. We do start out with strengths. As you know, that always works better with people when you start with strengths. So this is an example of one that we used with one classroom. So there is a plan of action that is developed per classroom, or one per classroom. So if you look at it, the first one, it says centers and materials are labeled with pictures and words, and that would correspond to item number 1 in the ICP. We don't provide strengths or suggestions on every single item. It's just the ones that they scored the highest on and probably the ones that they scored the lowest. So that would be an example of a strength that the teacher had. The next one, the teacher provided verbal and hand-over-hand support to children who were having difficulty with painting. So that day that they were doing painting in there, and if a child had difficulty with some fine motor coordination, that teacher offered hand-over-hand. There were many materials displayed in the classroom that reflected individual differences in a positive way. So that item would correspond with membership, which is one of the items in the ICP. And then feedback is another one. So we noticed that both teachers offered verbal and nonverbal feedback to children as well. So that would be the first part of the plan of action. And so the second part would be the suggestions. And so the suggestions are based off of those items where they scored the lowest. So they were in the 1, 2s, or 3s probably for this. And the suggestions are developed based on the next item up. So if they scored a 3, then our suggestions would be for a 5, possibly a 6 or a 7. So the suggestions would be encourage more social interactions between this child and their peers. And that would correspond with peer interaction, obviously, from the ICP. The second one would be provide opportunities for children to assume more social roles. That one would be for membership. So in this classroom, there were no opportunities for social roles to be assumed, or leadership opportunities where the child could be in charge of passing out snacks or being a line leader, or being able to assume more of a leadership role. Number 3 would be allow for opportunities for both teachers to engage in more positive and meaningful interactions. When we go over the data, we'll look at the relationship between the adult and the child. And so this is that item that they scored low on. And then offer more validation when the child is upset and allow the child to talk about their emotions and feelings. So the plan of action is given to the TA, the technical assistant, and the mentor by the ICP assessor. So they're developed and given to them, and then they're individualized to the classroom. And so the TA can really give even further suggestions that would help them more in the classroom. So let's take a look at the data. As you guys know, data is it is necessary to get a picture of what you're doing and to measure the success and then also areas of need in a program. So the first slide that we're looking at are the would just be descriptives and frequencies that we gathered. So for a total from 2015 to 2017, we've had 59 participants in the credential. So 11 out of the 59 classrooms scored at a 5 or above. So that would be a pretty high score if they scored that. No classrooms scored a 7. And if you've had a chance to look, you would know that 7 is the holy grail of, of classrooms for children with special needs. So when we look at the classrooms or the participants, we know we had participants that were educators in Head Start. So we had 2 participants from a Head Start. We had 1 from a half-day preschool program. We had 4 from, or these would be classrooms, sorry. 4 from a university-affiliated childcare center, and then we had 20 from just your traditional childcare center. We did look at the degrees of our participants. We had 13 with a high school diploma, 10 with some college, 8 with an associate's degree, 21 with a bachelor's degree, and then 7 who had a master's. Okay, so this slide, we're looking at each item, and this one gives you the pre and post test scores, and these items are the ones where we saw a significant change. So for us, the items where we found that the classrooms and the participants really excelled would be items for adaptations of space and materials. I won't read them all to you because that would be a lot. But if you look at them, they really, to me, these are a lot of items that they did really well on. So this table lets us know that we are seeing significant changes in the quality of inclusive practices in the classrooms and for those that have participated in the credential. We can also look at this data and see where the strengths and challenges are or still are, and also note some areas of strength such as membership. We found that to be a big strength, and then feedback as well. So is the teacher offering verbal and nonverbal feedback to the child in the classroom? So the flip side of the story, which is also just as valuable as the areas where there were much growth, we also wanted to know where our teachers were struggling so that we know what to do within the credential. What things do we need to change within professional development in order to help them achieve a more inclusive classroom? So the areas that we found that were not significant, item 3, which in the ICP is adult guidance of choice and play. So this area we did not see much growth. And then number 6, we didn't as well, and that assessed the relationships between adults and children. And we've had many discussions over this and have come up with some hypotheses over, what it could be. So item 12, we also looked that it was significant, however, it did not show a strong change. As the other items. So we decided that was also an area that we needed to work on. Lastly, if you look at item 4, this is conflict resolution. So it's a child or peers getting into a conflict and how the adult in the classroom diffuses that conflict. Fortunately, we didn't see that much in the classrooms that we went in because we're looking for significant conflict, not just peers took a toy and they got upset about that. We're looking for something a little more conflict than that. And we just didn't see that in our classrooms. We only had 4 that were scored on that item. So that was a null item for us. So for us, that was good. Okay, I'm going to send it back over to Dr. Westbrook. She's going to talk to you a little bit more about how this informed our professional development and also a little bit more about the credential.
Sure, thanks. So Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
It's always fun talking about data. Data truly does tell us a story, and our data informed us on how we could improve and make changes to our professional development. So I wanted to talk about some of those changes that we did this past year based on what we learned from our data. So one was we reorganized our credential, where we used to start with an introduction of quality inclusion and universal design for learning. We now start at the basics of typical development and identifying red flags. It helped our teachers really become aware of what they were seeing in their classroom. Next, we enhanced the plan of action, as Leslie talked about earlier. Not only did we change the format so that it would be more teacher friendly, but we also now review the plan of action during each mentoring session. And if needed, we truly break it down over the course of the credential. So it's not being thrown at teachers all at one time. We don't want to overwhelm the participants by identifying all the areas of concern at once. In general, we always talk about the importance of relationships, but we really highlighted relationships in every single module. So our participants are hearing about relationships continuously. We know that relationships are the foundation for all learning, and recognize that in every single model we wanted to provide an emphasis on that, and also some active learning opportunities during the didactic trainings. So like Leslie said earlier, item number 3 and item number 6 were not significant on the ICP. Basically, what we found was that the participants, when we kind of broke down and looked at items number 3 and 6, the participants were missing the mark. They had difficulty getting past that minimum standard for these questions. And so we spent a lot of time looking at how can we improve both of these. So to address item number 3, we discussed embedding learning opportunities throughout the credentials, specifically how to use scaffolding techniques during learning activities. Our amazing technical assistance provider takes this one step further to help participants learn how to do this for their own classrooms. So we're talking about it in the training, and then technical assistance is provided so that there's some hands-on support in the classroom to make that happen. To address item number 6, we intentionally teach the importance of individual conversations with teachers, discussing how to have a sustained reciprocal conversation with all children. We saw a lot of commenting when we were observing in the classrooms. Teachers do a nice job of, recognizing children, commenting on what they're doing, but they weren't taking it to that reciprocal back and forth conversation. And that's one of the standards in the ICP. There's a lot of information provided specifically to item number 6 and this reciprocal and sustained interaction. So again, TA follows up, models this in the classrooms, and coaches teachers through reciprocal and sustained interactions in the classroom. Additionally, to address item number 6 and item number 11, which wasn't marginally significant, that's the family and professional partnerships, we updated the homework. So we want to make sure that our participants are digging into these items a little bit more on their own. So for item number 6, this is a TA, a module that's labeled Engage Me, a framework for behavior management. And so our participants look specifically at practicing strategies to enhance social and emotional development with 3 children in their classroom, including at least one identified child with a disability. So here teachers have to be intentional and practice this strategy of conversations and encouraging social interactions in their classroom. And then for item number 11, which was only marginally significant, we updated the homework to include some specific assignments for directors, because in our credential, one of the people that we recruit are directors. So we love it when directors participate with their teachers in the credential, so that they have this information and are learning the techniques and practices as well. So believe it or not, many of the handbooks did not have a written statement on inclusion or communication. So we're working with our directors on how to say what practices they're using, what needs to be said, what needs to be written down to truly reflect an inclusive environment in their class, in their center. So lastly, one of the important things that we want to do here at MECSC is use this data to impact policy and practice. You know, our goal is that we truly want every child in Mississippi to have equal access, support, and participation in early education programs. Changes to current policy and practices would create a culture that promotes inclusive practices and truly engages family. Utilizing the ICP to assess practices provides us the opportunity to ensure that policy and practices are changed. And these changes are able to enhance access to high quality early childhood programs for all children, early access to specialized instruction, obviously program standards for inclusion. We want our children in quality inclusive classrooms so that they can grow and develop to their best and to their potential. And then also we want to impact the attitudes and beliefs of the adults and peers. Positive attitude plays a large part of children being successful in an inclusive environment. Positive attitudes from the adults. So we hope that with our program, we are making an impact and changing some of these practices.
Okay, again, thank you very much. We are going to be doing a question and answer session in just a couple minutes. Again, thank you very much, Drs. Westbrook and Laverne. Just great information on how you're using it. Right now, I just want to review with the Inclusive Classroom Profile. These are the available products from Brookes Publishing. The ICP comes with the manual, which it guides users on understanding, implementing, and scoring the ICP. Then the actual tool itself is the forms, and that comes in a package of 5 32-page forms. To order or get more information on the ICP, please visit brookespublishing.com/ICP. And then we have a special offer for anyone that's joining us today. You can save 20% on Brookes products, including the inclusive classroom profile. You just need to use code ICPWeb20. It is case sensitive, and then that expires on October 31st, Halloween. Okay, and now if you have any questions, if you could please submit those to us. I do have a couple questions that were sent in. Dr. Westbrook?
Sure.
You guys are there? Okay. I don't really think you have a choice. So, exactly, like with the programs that were evaluated, what do you think the average number of IEPs were in the classroom? Like, do you think it was mostly just one student, or did programs have a few, or did it just vary?
Sure. So one unique thing about the ICP is that it has to be conducted in a classroom that has an identified child with a disability.
Yes.
And so every classroom had at least one child with a disability, and several. I mean, I don't know. So I would have to, I hate to give it. So at least one child in every classroom. But there are in cases where, just off the top of my head, I know several classrooms have, I would say two to three
that were at risk or were identified but unidentified at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so specifically about the IEP question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that some of our classrooms were childcare centers, so privately owned childcare, as well as the half-day program, and parents don't necessarily have to provide that information to those teachers. So although a child might have a identified disability, even a diagnosis that the family has shared with the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that they've shared the IEP with the classroom.
Or that they have it on file.
Which is, again, another reason why items 11 and 12 that really look at that those practices of the IEP, of utilizing the IEP,
Yes.
why those are not marginally significant.
And there were some changes. Go ahead.
No, you can continue. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say from 11 and 12 are honestly our lowest scoring items by far when we did the ICP, and that's because it was a center-wide. Those two items really need the entire center to be on board, and it's also including the family as well. And it's not that centers aren't doing that. You know, it's just like Dr. Westbrook was saying, do you have a communication policy with parents that they can see? Not necessarily if they may have had it verbally, but we needed to see an official in writing, you know, and it's the same thing with the IEP. The teacher would say, well, yeah, they have an IEP, but there was nothing on file, and they didn't attend IEP meetings. And so those two items were really low for us.
Okay. Here, I have a couple more. Did the ICP administrators have the 5-day training to use the ICP tool?
We sure did. There's 3 of us on staff who are ICP administrators. Myself, Leslie, and my colleague, Shelly Ezel. And we have all attended the training, and none of us do credential. So we are outsiders going in to observe these classrooms. We do not deliver the credential. We do not technical assistance for the credential. So.
Okay. We have a few questions coming in. This is great. So how long does it take for the staff to complete the ICP?
It takes anywhere, I would say, between 2 and 3 hours per classroom. You want to make sure, we always make sure to get there early in the morning because it's good to capture group activities, and most of those happen first thing in the morning.
Yes, definitely. And then also, in order to get the credential, is there a certain amount of improvement that needs to be made in the ICP scores? So I know you score in the beginning and then you score in the end. Like, is it just that any improvement needs to be shown?
Sure. Yes. So for us, the credential is a lot of times when we've talked with other people who are doing things with their state departments, we use the word credential and you think a certificate or an endorsement.
Yes.
So just saying they went through this professional development program, and the ICP is a part of the credential, but it's not the only aspect of the credential. So they also have tests and assessments, and so to successfully complete it, they have to improve 80% of everything altogether.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm just checking if there are any other questions. If you could go ahead and put those in the question box. Someone did ask, did you use this tool in the family childcare home? I know you mentioned it was used in private childcare. Was it used in any family?
No, we have not. No family daycares or childcare have participated in the credential.
Okay, great. And then, so just in the future, how many more groups are you looking to include? Like maybe in the next year?
Sure. So we have our preschool credential, and then we also recently started an infant toddler credential because we recognize the importance of really providing a quality, inclusive environment for our infants and toddlers as well. The ICP can be used on classrooms as well, it's standardized, validated for 2 to 5-year-olds. So we have used it in our 2-year-old classrooms with our infant toddler credential, and then we'll do it with our preschool credentials. So we do 2 each year, 1 infant toddler credential and 1 preschool credential. Our goal next year is to have 100 participants for the credential, both broken up between infant, toddler, and preschool credential.
Great.
Sometimes the credential, we've only had 59 classrooms, but in the past, our participants have been both teacher and teacher assistants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we've had more participants, but fewer classrooms, and then also the directors, obviously.
Great.
An ICP on a or on a director, because they're not technically in a classroom.
Right.
Great. And when were you first introduced to the ICP?
2015.
Yeah, 2000.
It was January or February. So
Yeah,
it was the first
we were looking for a measure to assess our program, and our colleague Nicole Versino had done some research, and she said, "I think we should check this out."
And it was
so
life-changing.
It was life-changing. It was life-changing. It's important to collect data, to know, just the changes that we've made in 1 year based on the data that we collected, to make improvements, because we want our teachers to provide quality, inclusive environments and to engage in these practices that are so meaningful. And before the ICP, we didn't have anything to measure the environment, to really see what changes were being made based on training and technical assistance. And so it was really important for us as a group to find something that that gave us that validation, that measured what was going on. And Leslie and I, we have these grand, thoughts and dreams of wanting all of our children to be in quality programs and to assess lots of practice, lots of centers and lots of programs.
Mm-hmm.
We also joke, not really, as a group, to get to that next level, those 6 and 7s, we need to develop a credential 2.0 that really takes the training to the next step. So.
Well, great. Then we'll expect you to give a webinar on that then.
Okay. We'll see.
We're kidding. We're not really doing that. No, I'm kidding.
No, but definitely, like you said, the ICP is a one-of-a-kind tool, and I think it is definitely great what you are doing with it in Mississippi. Again, I think, a lot of people get this information on what the ICP is, but it's great to see it in action. So definitely thank you for all the information. And then I have one more question. Is someone asked if you could get a copy of the PowerPoint. Yes, this will go out tomorrow in a link.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to wrap this up. I just want to give a huge thank you to Drs. Westbrook and Laverne. Great information that you sent. If there's any additional questions, you can submit them in the question box and I'll make sure to get answers for you. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Sure.